Hey y'all, this is Julie at Two Chicks Quilting in Ganado, Texas, and I'm here today to talk about quilting with MonoPoly thread. And MonoPoly thread is one of those specialty threads that I really encourage you to not be afraid of and to learn how to work with. We're going to talk a little bit more about the different options, but why would you want to quilt with MonoPoly? One reason is sometimes you have a panel that's very colorful, very busy, and you just can't decide what color you want to use on that. So it just seems like any color you quilt on it is going to distract from the design of the panel. So that's a time that I go to MonoPoly. Another reason is because, or another time is because I want my design of my quilt to show up and not my thread. So like this little quilt here is 1/2 inch finished squares, and I want to quilt it to where it's very quilted and quilted down really well, but yet I don't want to have a color of thread to come through all these colors I've used. I think there's 50 different colors in this quilt. I don't want to pull a turquoise through here or a mint through here to take away from the other colors. So I have chosen to use a MonoPoly thread on it. Now, when you're working with MonoPoly, keep in mind there's two different shades. You have a clear and then you have smoke. If you were working on something that's a darker charcoal black, darker colors, the smoke is better because it kind of blends with the color. The clear shows up just a little too much on those darker colors. So that's when you use the smoke. I'm using the clear here, and we're going to zoom in on that in just a minute and talk about the quilting of it. But one of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're using this on a long arm, like the Amara 20 here I'm quilting on, you need to know, is your cone, are you quilting with a cone or a straight wound spool? If you're quilting with the spool, make sure that you have the horizontal spool pin so that your thread is coming off of the spool correctly. If you are quilting with your cone, it's just going to stand on your thread sand just as normal. Now, I do have a thread net on it because the MonoPoly thread is very, I like to call it slick, and it's going to fall down on itself and get tangled up. So the thread net helps hold that tension on that spool really well. And then when you're threading it, you're going to have to be very careful how much tension you put on this thread. So on the HandiQuilter, we have this tensioner right here, and it has 3 holes in it. I call this the barber pole, and typically we're going to thread back to front, back to front, back to front through all 3 holes. When I use MonoPoly, I only go through the top hole, and I turn my tension down really low. So always test that when you get it threaded. Turn your tension down really low and then test it off to the side of your quilt. Make sure that you have good tension before you get started. Don't be afraid of the MonoPoly thread. It's really fun to work with, and it gives you the design or the texture without seeing the thread. So let's talk about what I'm quilting here and how I'm doing it too, because while we're here and looking at this beautiful quilt, so this is again a 1/2 inch finished grid, and I did square it up and make sure it was put onto my long arm straight. But with all of these seams, you can imagine how hard it is to do a straight line across here and it still looks straight. So I am striving for an imperfection, an perfect look, right? So I don't want it to be perfect. I want it to be slightly imperfect so that you can't see that the line might not be perfectly straight all the way across it. So I am using MonoPoly here by Superior, and we do carry that here in the shop. I am also going to, even though my Pro Stitcher has a channel lock on it, I'm not using the Pro Stitcher channel lock. I am choosing to use the standard, just the little plastic channel lock. I'm going to put it on one wheel. The reason I do this is because it allows me to have just a little bit of wiggle room to straighten that line out when I need to. So I have basted my sides down, and I'm going to come over here to the side. I'm going to put my channel lock on one of my wheels, and then with pressure, I can pull it to where I want it to, where I want it to be. I'm going to hold in the MonoPoly thread. If you're trying to thread your needle and it's hard for you, you can take a Sharpie marker and just kind of mark the end of that thread, and it's with the black marker, and then you can see it go through the eye of your needle. Just one other little tip. I'm going to needle down, needle up. Now my bobbin has just my regular So Fine that I typically use in the bobbin, and it's a cream color, so it's going to blend fine with the backing. It also blends really well, you know, but my tension's set, so I don't see it popping up to the top, but you don't want to use MonoPoly in your bobbin. So I'm going to stitch across, and as I'm going, I'm watching where I'm stitching, and then if I need to adjust where that line is falling, I just pull or push on the handlebars to get it where I want it. So as it gets to a spot that's a little bit off, I can still stay pretty straight. But again, I'm striving for the perfect imperfection of quilting that I'm looking for. I don't want it to be perfectly straight, because if it's perfectly straight, to me, it's not going to look as neat. So I'm just going back and forth across this whole quilt, and I'm making sure that I get right on that seam, and it's that way it lays it down really nicely. Because if you've ever done anything with 1/2-inch squares, those seams take up a lot of room. So that's how we're going to do it. I'm going to continue on. I've put 3 lines across each 1/2-inch strip here, or row, and I'm going to quilt the whole thing down using MonoPoly. If it breaks on you, you've got your tension too tight. Loosen that tension up, test it again off to the side. I am going back and forth very slowly, you notice, because I don't want to put, if I go too fast, you're putting extra strain on that thread. You're also, your machine working backwards, sometimes you have thread breaks, but I have done this whole thing without a thread break, knock on wood. And so just slow it down and be patient with it, and learn how to use that MonoPoly thread, because you will not regret it. Y'all have a great day. See you later. Bye.